All right. Garth Weber, you are the SVP, Chief Brand and Marketing Officer at Duluth Trading. How are you doing today, sir?
Fantastic. Great to be here.
Did I get the title right?
You did. Yeah, indeed.
Wonderful. You never know. Some people get promoted, demoted, move around. But in this case, same role, doing awesome stuff here at Duluth Trading. Is that correct?
Accurate description. Yes.
Yes.
I've been at Duluth only for a little over a year, though.
Okay.
So it's still semi. I mean, as a organization, still somewhat new to me, but fits right in with my sense of humor. So it's been an easy transition.
It's awesome stuff. So what are we going to talk about? I think we'll talk about Duluth. We'll talk about agency side, brand side, advice. Does that sound good to you, sir?
That's perfect. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's kick it off then. What does an SVP, Chief Brand and Marketing Officer, do at Duluth Trading? What's your day-to-day like? What's on your mind today?
So great question. So I'm responsible for the brand's creative and marketing functions at Duluth, and a great team, pretty big team working with me. And then we also have a long-term, I'm going to give a plug out to Planet Propaganda out of Madison. They're a long-term agency of record for us, and they're fantastic partners and do a lot of the, sort of the national advertising in terms of the creative that we do. So they've been a great partner, one of the great builders of the brand. So my day-to-day really is trying to, like right now, for example, because we're coming towards the end of 2024, really talking about what's 2025 going to be for us. What investments do we want to make? What's our media strategy going to be? Same, different, something like that for the next year. While simultaneously, we're very obviously focused on the next 2 months because they're the biggest for all retailers. These are the biggest months of the year, and so it's sort of a living in two years and two worlds simultaneously, trying to solve the day-to-day problems or challenges, and then also thinking about where are we going. So my role today, which is quite a bit different than it has gone through my career, is very much more on the like strategy vision side, and kind of trying to think ahead to 1 to 2 years. And making sure that we're making the correct steps today so that we can get to those goals.
Yeah, it seems very holistic about the brand and the organization and the business itself. I think that's something that maybe agency people need to hear about, because I think agency people have, at some point in their life, they're going to think about what is life like on the other side, and it's much different. I would imagine. Is this true?
And when you say on the other side, you mean on the brand side of things?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting. I can give you a couple of stories because I've been on both sides. I would say half my career was on the agency side, and half of my career was on the brand side. And my agency experience is somewhat unique in that I worked for big agencies. Some of the big ones we all are familiar with. I've worked with some really small ones too. That were focused on specific channel expertise or audience expertise or something like that. And then I had my own agency as well and worked for myself for a long time. So this is a funny story, but like when one of our clients, back in the day, they asked for like a shop and shop takeover in Dick's Sporting Goods. So we were designing this big sort of takeover for them, a big pad recreation, and we probably went through. And this is when I had my own agency. We probably went through 7 or 8 different rounds, like significant rounds of review and revision. And anyone who works for agencies, this song and dance, and scope kept changing, yada yada, and then at the end of the day, they paid us our money and killed the project. And the whole thing never happened. And and I was talking to the client, and this has happened a lot in my career, where you do a lot of work, but it doesn't actually get built or produced for one reason or another. And the client told us, after the fact, he's like, well, the whole exercise was kind of to prove to their leadership that it was a bad idea. So we were briefed in on a bad idea and tried and went through the ringers to show that it was a bad idea. And that was sort of the brief behind the brief. And I think, I'm sure some of your listeners, viewers, that have many stories like that, of like a lot of work and something that actually never was going to see the light of day anyway. And on the brand side, of course, that doesn't happen. So it's a very, the agencies can be, in my experience, so integral to the success of, whatever the initiative is or whatever the yearly goal is. And sometimes they are recognized as such. And then sometimes it's very much like, you're not even sure necessarily the sort of the purpose of the reason behind the ask. And sometimes you never learn, but sometimes you do. So, and when I was on the agency side, and I think there's pluses and minuses to both, but I realized as I was getting further along in my career, I wanted to be more the guy who wrote the brief than the person receiving the brief. And mostly because the briefs that I would receive would always be the brief backs would be more of a brief than the brief. So you'd really have to do your own thinking around it. And I thought, if I could do this before the the whole project started, or if I could understand in a more holistic way why this project is important, then the creative output from it would be so much better. And so it was very intentional to say, like, well, how do I become that guy? And so when, it took a few years, to like trying to figure my way into that. But, yeah. And then also it's kind of a progression of like, once you become the guy writing the brief, it's like, then it's like, well, is this the right brief at all? Like, is this the right project at all? Like, what is this actually going to do for us? And so anyway, you kind of keep expanding in these sort of, mental arenas of trying to, like, for me, it was trying to learn more, but also how can I create more impact with the work that I'm doing, rather than, like I said, did a lot of great work, got a nice little paycheck, and the thing never was built, so that's, that sort of left me feeling like this can be, if it's about the money or the hourly rate or whatever, like that's one thing. For me, it wasn't that. It was that's great, but I was really like, okay, how does this actually impact or improve, people's experience at a Dick's Sporting Goods, for
Right.
example.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. So then when you decided that you wanted to make that jump and you want to be the person writing the brief, so where were you at? Where were you working at the time? And then what steps did you take to get to the brand side?
Yeah, so I was at that point. I was when I first started this idea, I was at Nemo Design, which is in Portland, Oregon, an agency. I was working on the retail side of the business. We were designing stores, and this is a great example of like the Dick's Sporting Goods. I said, but I was mostly doing strategy for them, and account management and design. So
There's a lot of stuff.
kind of had a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. We had a small retail team, but uh, yeah, it was around that time too. And I think the strategy was the key. One of the key things here is like moving away from just designing the retail store to like thinking about, obviously, at that point, the omni-channel effects of moving from clicks to bricks or back and forth, or really trying to figure that out at the time. This was around 2007, 2008. And so for me, the first step was to move into strategy and to say, okay, I'm going to try and write a bigger purpose statement, I guess, for some of these things, and to tease out how it could impact, some of the omni-channel approaches that the clients were having. We wouldn't be briefed in on that because we were the retail design team. So it was just more of a proactivity to be like, okay, how is this going to connect, and how are we, what are your plans for an app in the future, like, and how will that app connect to these, to this footwear wall down, when we get there. And by doing so, I was able to be invited into more conversations around like, okay, well, yeah, let's talk about this more holistically. And then there was a process there of like, honestly, like having it kind of in the back of the mind, but like always looking for those opportunities to ask the bigger questions. And when I would find myself at tables or meetings with new people, I just keep bringing the questions back out and really kind of prodding. And it's so over time, it kind of grew to, I guess, a reputation that not only was I going to bring solid, strong design ideas to the table, but they're going to be thoughtful ones, and they're going to be my best attempt at the right ones for their business. So it's essentially becoming a business partner, not necessarily just a design partner. And then when I started my own show in 2012, I it was with that reputation in hand. And so, not to say we got to design, we got to write. We did write strategy, and we did more holistic stuff, but we were still, an agency that was there to sort of take the brief and deliver the execution. But the clients that I had at that point, one of which was Adidas. You know, after I exited the agency a few years later, they brought me on as one of their senior directors for brand design and moved me to Germany. So it's that, and then therefore my leap to the brand side, right? From there, and that's kind of how the journey worked for me. It
Yeah.
was just really through my own personal, like, I want to do. I think I have an idea of what I want to do more than this, and then also, like, just showing up and asking hard questions, not only of yourself but of your clients. And then, when the opportunity came, it was actually a hard decision for us because we were at this stage in our lives where, like, moving to Germany was that, like, at this point I was not a young man, so I thought we had a hard decision to make, but super glad we made it for a lot of reasons. But that, again, got me on the brand side. And then I was really, once there, like, and the big global brand like Adidas is different than, other brands, in terms of their sort of a matrix organization type. So there was a lot for me to learn there too, like how valuable creative and creative thinking can be, again, for a business, even when you're talking about the pretty significant differences between, like, the China market and the Brazil market, right? And how do you translate your ideas so that they would resonate in a global sense? So, and then deploying local agencies to help you deliver that.
Got it.
So a lot of learning from that. Yeah.
Wow. Incredible. And yeah, what was it like working in Germany? And do you speak German? Did you have to learn?
I did a little bit,
Yeah.
but no, we never. Our son, who was born before we went, he came back fluent. So that was nice. We could take him to the doctor's office and be like, "Hey, what did they just say?"
Oh, that's
but
incredible.
but we lived in Nuremberg, so and if we had lived in Munich or Berlin or something like that, English would have been more prevalent. But it wasn't super prevalent in Nuremberg, so we had to learn how to get ourselves around. But the Adidas bubble and Puma is there as well, all in that same area. So there was a lot of English speakers. So we were an expats, so we were able to navigate it well. The one thing I'll say about that I learned, there's so much that I learned in Germany, but one thing that might be relevant here is my team. There was a couple other Americans, a few Brits, but then the rest were all, either Central European or German or Spanish or Argentinian or from Australia. I mean, they're from Northern Ireland. They're from everywhere. I've never worked with a more diverse group of people in my career before or since. And to just give you one example, we had to design a logo for something. And the process by which the Portuguese designers, who are very talented, and the American designers, who are very talented, went about to design a logo were the massively different, even like I would say opposites. Like in the American way, the way that I used to, it's like you go into a room and you throw up like 500 designs, as much as you possibly can, and you go around and you circle things and you talk, you sort of like edit it down, uh, and and that gives you I think the benefit of that is from a client perspective or from a leadership perspective, you get to see how much effort was put into it, right? Like wow, that's a lot. You guys really kicked the tires on this. You really went all the way to try and figure out what the right solution was. Um, and I don't know if this is just the Portuguese way, but the two designers I'm talking about were from Portugal, and they did it. They went through the whole process of really identifying the rationale behind it. Why do we need it? What's how abstract should it be? How more connected to whatever this influence is? They have this entirely kind of mind map of what the successful logo, successful mark would be. And then they design the mark. And that mark might have three options. That's it.
Wow.
And so when then they present it, you're like, oh yeah, I kind of like that one. So show me all your work. Show me the iterations you did to get there. And they're like, it's that one. and so and so I mean, and neither way was right or wrong. It was just so different, and I had to like navigate with my like European leadership or my American leadership, and they also had different expectations of like what the right process would be to create this thing. So to learn, for me to really learn how many different creative processes there are out there to get you to a successful solution, was extremely humbling and sort of mind opening for me. But then I also learned that because I had so many different styles of people, styles of ways of working, that we all learned from each other, and we were able to leap forward faster into innovation than I've ever experienced before. Like there would be pretty open and sometimes significant dialogue around which way was the correct way, like and all of that. But all that did is just spur people further along. Like if you just stayed in the American creative system, for example, I would have never learned, these other ways of getting there, and made me a better designer, but also made me a much better leader of creatives.
Totally. Totally. And what was some of the work that you achieved or published while in Germany working at Adidas?
We at the time, so we did the 2018, I think it was, World Cup. I'm trying to remember my 4-year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Get a World Cup on there. What? Anything?
Yeah, so World Cup, and then we were working towards the Tokyo Olympics, but then and the 2020 Euros,
Yeah.
And those got canceled for
Right.
COVID for obvious reasons. But my role basically there was to deliver the creative direction for some key business priorities, like the sustainability initiatives there, which were very big with end plastic waste and Run for the Oceans and Parley Ocean Plastics and all of that stuff. So it wasn't necessarily campaigns for product launches. It was for like kind of a platform for a bunch of product. But then also the teams that I managed were delivering the global creative direction for the key performance sport categories like global football, training, running, and like tennis, for example.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
and outdoor.
Tell me, what else did you learn about, I would imagine this was your time now to manage internal teams and the creativity within the internal teams, but then also you mentioned working with local agencies across different markets. How do you go
Yes.
about that? What was the learnings there of managing outside agencies?
So this is more of a philosophy for me, and it's just not the necessarily the right way to do it. Others, I'm sure, have different ways of doing this, but I'm pretty, because I've been on both sides, like I said, and I've experienced I guess, successes and failures on both sides. From the brand side, what I think is really important and what I always try to do and create on my internal brand teams, creative teams, is that we essentially are the stewards or the caretakers of the brand. We would be the ones that we know where we're going with it. We know what we want to do with it. We try to understand how we want it to show up and how we want it to look. And then we would use agencies, whether they're channel specific agencies or they were like agencies that have specific skill sets, like amazing 3D animation or whatever, to help us deliver this brand vision that we were developing. So the internal team, in my way of doing it, can be pretty small, but as long as they're mighty, like they're very good and clear about what we're trying to do, and then we can have, whether it's one agency or 6 agencies working with us to like deliver what we need to, and that's still on the global level. Like, okay, here's what, for example, here's what the World Cup should look like or should feel like, and with very robust examples and executions underneath it that were provided to us by agency partners. But then that package, as it stands, would then go to various key countries that have big teams or big followings or regions or marketplaces or something like that, and then they would take that and we would help direct the local agencies to sometimes value engineer our ideas because the market didn't have the money to do the window to display that we had given them. So that navigation back and forth, that negotiation back and forth, I should say, between, okay, what's the right value engineer thing to do? Is that actually the right agency partner to use? And working with the marketing teams specifically and the sales teams within those specific markets or regions or cities to deliver, what they would need from it. So there's like a brand fidelity that needs to be somehow maintained, while at the same time, it only works if you sell stuff in market, right? So it's like, it can't just be the brand doing whatever the brand wants. It's like, okay, how do we translate that while maintaining the fidelity, integrity that we need to have it? So there's a lot of oversight and governance as a part of it as well. So a lot of big heavy lift of work on the front end to deliver really compelling package, and then governance on the back end to make sure that it succeeds as intended. The governance part is extremely difficult, to be honest with you, because you can't see everything always, and so there's plenty of, everyone has examples who've done this job before, plenty of examples of like, just like you see something on Instagram or whatever, and you're just like, oh my God, how'd that happen? It's just such a terrible execution of our idea. But again, you keep trying to catch most of them.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. So learning a lot of that, I'm sure, at Adidas. And then tell me how you got to Wilson.
Yeah. So coming out of COVID, we had a decision to make as a family to like, are we going to stay in Germany? Our son was entering the school system, and we really tried actually to make that work. We were very, very motivated to stay in Europe because we loved living there. But we also hadn't seen our families for 2 years because of the pandemic, and we had all that stuff. So we were on the fence about what to do. And at that time, there was one of my Adidas colleagues, he also, like myself, used to work at Nike back in the day. We had a common friend essentially who was at Wilson, and so I went through a couple interviews with them over the course of 2020, and then eventually accepted a role there. And so then we came home. We came back to the Chicago area, and yeah, so that's how that happened on the personal level. But the job, which was really interesting, was to bring about a brand, what they call the brand transformation at Wilson. And so that was for me, a fantastic challenge to take on. I was as a former athlete and a person who has been in sports for my most of my career. It's like, and then the iconic nature of Wilson, like, sure, we can, let's take on the brand. So that was, yeah,
What was
that's,
the, tell me about the brand transformation that you had to show up and execute. Where was the brand at, and what were you trying to transform it to?
yeah, we had, so Wilson, depending on the sport that you love or play, it means different things to different people. I grew up playing basketball, so the Wilson Jet basketball is my favorite basketball of all time. And every time, we would play different basketballs in different games, but every time a Wilson ball was there, I was like, okay. I just had a confidence in me because I loved the feel of it in my hand for whatever reason. Tennis, obviously, very different. Baseball, we're huge in baseball, also very different. So the challenge was to take what was the commonality between all of these experiences for athletes, because the sort of the guiding principle at Wilson is, will the athlete love it? So if we're going to develop product, whatever that product is the athlete, the true athlete in this sport, going to love this? And if the answer is, I don't know, then it's the open question is, why are we doing it? So again, anyways, trying to take all of these, or trying to find a couple commonalities amidst all of these differences, and then building that up. One of the ways that we did that, very, very tactically, is we opened for the first time in the history of the 108-year history of the company, we opened our own Wilson stores. So there had never been a Wilson store before, what was it? It would have been like 2022, maybe,
Yeah,
2021. And so, but I learned this at Nike back in the day. Like when you take all these disparate sort of business units, or kind of like different approaches to the brand, and you've kind of artificially forced them to live together in one store or in one place, you really see how different everything is, and you really see how that's not going to work for you. So we had to develop sort of a key, sort of a brand look and DNA that we would express in in a physical space. And then that helped us, led us to some other things in terms of like how we redesigned the website and how we would want to go after athletes in the future and partnerships, et cetera. And then the second thing I would say with regards to that was we launched Wilson Sportswear. So another like high-end apparel line, so that again it's something that you could wear playing any sport, sort of is how it was launched. So again, trying to find these commonalities that and sometimes forced commonalities, so that Wilson could show up like a brand rather than like a baseball brand to the baseball
right.
kid or a tennis brand to the tennis player, right? So those are some of the strategies that we deployed, and so much of it worked really, really well, and not just from a brand perspective, but there was a sort of a massive increase in sales and performance as well, just from those efforts.
Yeah. Any agency partners on that, or is that in house?
That's not a lot of agency partners on that.
Wow.
No, so we worked with like specific contributors, like photographers, and then we had some outside help on apparel design.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, an architect who helped us with the store design, or the store creation, but like that concept all came from the internal team. So
You
there's very little agency work on that.
seem like the perfect role for that. With the previous conversation, we were talking earlier about your retail design and the store development that you were doing before you went brand side. So it kind of makes sense there that you'd be a good candidate for that.
Yeah. So, that was, again, then from a business standpoint, I think just recently went public. So there was a lot of shifting in terms of like once we had sort of established this brand position moving forward, I got a call from Duluth, and I thought it was a great time in many ways to make the transition to this another brand. He's very If you know it, you know it, and it's pretty iconic for those audiences. And also, likewise, it's sort of like, where is this going in a digitally led future? And so
Yeah.
we're on right
So
now.
so you took the call and you said, "Yes, I'm in." And that started about a year ago, as you mentioned at the start
Yeah,
of
a
the
little over.
podcast. So what are
Yeah.
your, accepting the call and accepting the job, I guess, what were they asking you for help with? What's your mission on this first couple of years that you're in office?
There's like two things especially or essentially, and one is we we're beloved by a very loyal and very sort of very large customer base that is also aging. Like they've been with the brand has been we've been in existence since um, 89, I want to say, or 90. And, people who have been our customers who've been with us for 20 years, 20, 15 years, like the, we've sort of as a brand aged with them. Like as they have gotten, more into retirement or whatever, so the brand has also become, just kept
Yeah. So
meeting
spark
that
some
demand.
life, attract some new,
Yeah. So
retain and attract some new.
exactly. We got to retain and continue to excite our current customers while we attract, inspire, and gain, younger customers. So that's a big one. And as a part of that, as you can imagine, like really aggressively going into like a mobile first digital strategy for where people obviously live and consume content. uh, and we're such a well-known storytelling brand. We tell great stories, so bringing those stories into the digital space more natively and more effectively is a big component of what I'm doing here.
How would you describe the brand today? You've been there for about a year now. So maybe as you perceived it going in versus you're living it now, you're part of it. How would you describe the brand?
um, That's an interesting question from like an outside to the inside. I studied Duluth back in the 2010, 2011, because we were working on a rebrand of a company, and the Duluth ads were just like really kind of coming out in their weird line art wonderness. And I thought, so as I kind of went deep on them at one point to be like, okay, what is, this is really interesting. What are they doing here? So that has stuck with me since then. I wasn't a Duluth customer per se. I just was like a huge fan as a marketer and as a creative. On the inside, one of the things that I realized is how a couple things: how well the product is made. Like the price points of our product are not they're high, and the amount of precision and effort and all that goes into that product is was amazing, and inspiring to me. And like, okay, these we can go deeper on these stories, just in terms of like how things are made and the attention to detail, etc., which was a surprise to me. So that was one of the things. Like, can we get credit more for that? Um, and then the other thing is which is you kind of see on the outside, but the from the founder all the way down, like the most important thing here is brand and story. It has for years trumped sales or margin or like these things that you would typically think people would be obsessed with. Instead, here they've been obsessed with the customer and obsessed with you know that story. So um, and that's remains true today. So I think the fun challenge is because we're a publicly traded company, so it's like we obviously have to do right by our investors and do everything we can to do right by them, but uh, how and can that be run through a brand first, brand led way of doing things? And how I grew up, I grew up in the if you grew up in the like Nike system where brand was everything and the brand drives business, that sort of thing. And it's the same mindset here. And so that's also really exciting to me because I kind of know those levers to pull to do that.
I
So,
love
and
that.
like I said, we have a
Yeah,
really,
that's
really
enticing.
great,
I could see.
yeah,
I was gonna
yeah.
say.
We have great
I could
partners
see
too
how
in
you
the
would.
agency.
What's the name of the agency again that you guys work with?
Oh,
You have the
yeah,
AOR.
Planet Propaganda. They're the AO. Yeah, it's the AOR.
Nice, nice. And what's some of that recent work that you guys have launched? I saw that there's an exchange of some sort you guys did.
Well, there was earlier this year that we did our first and hopefully not last ever underwear trade up event. So, you know, trade in your old underwear for a free pair of new underwear. And we did that on the street in Louisville, Kentucky, which was a lot of fun. We just put out, we have a new extension of one of our most famous pants called the Fire Hose Pants, where it's tougher than an angry beaver's teeth. So we have a new ad out with it's now an army of angry beavers going after a pair of pants. So things like that. And then where also it's exciting is we're pretty heavy right now in the college football season. So a lot of our content is out there for that. But the biggest growth driver for us right now is, and intentionally so, but is women's. And probably our most popular product today, like in terms of growth, not in terms of like actual sales, but in terms of like how quickly it's growing, is our heirloom garden overalls. And so
Hmm.
they're uh, super popular. We've got a lot of a very loyal following around them, and so we're creating content sort of ongoing for that as well.
Oh, these are cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
I'm
we did
excited to
the
see the strategy play out, executions to get that out there. So I'll definitely be on the lookout.
cool.
Wonderful. Well, then, as we're wrapping up here, Garth, this has been incredible hearing your story, hearing about the transition from agency side to brand side. I'm learning that there's a lot more levers, a lot more layers, and things to consider. I would say is the best way to phrase it on the brand side. A lot more items. So I think that's really illuminating for us on the agency side, those that want to break into the agency side. What final advice would you have for agency professionals that are to work better with their brands, to deliver better work, uh, to be better partners with their clients?
Uh, it's a big question as we wrap up, but I will say just a couple of things of advice. I guess I would say, like my career path was has been very non-linear. Like I started as a writer, and then just slowly meandered through, realizing I had skills on the visual side that I didn't actually really know about myself as I went through it. There's so many times I had to kind of force myself into conversations that I didn't really have any expertise to be a part of, but it's because I wanted to learn and I wanted to like soak it up. And then when I felt like I had learned whatever that was, I would look for the next thing that was my curiosity would interest me in this journey. And it was around that time, like I said before, around 2007, 2008, where I realized what I wanted to do was I just wanted to do bigger projects that had bigger impact. And I knew then, therefore, I would need to work with more people than just being kind of an agency, a writer or a strategist or a designer in an agency. And how do I either join larger organizations to make that happen, or how do I lead larger teams to make that happen? But I really had a clear goal of what I wanted to achieve. And it took me a while to get there, but once I had that, okay, this is what I really want to pursue, then I sort of just kept on that path to get there. And to be honest, I didn't know or expect that I would end up on the brand side to do it. I thought as an agency owner and as like a really key partner with people that we could do it on the agency side. And I still believe that. This isn't like I had to go this route. But the goal was still the goal in terms of what I needed to do to get there. It was going to be, I would discover it. But that's like, having a clear goal once you have it is important, but also like just always learning and always pursuing that. Like, I don't know that as well as I should or as well as I want to. So I'm going to need to take the next year to learn about that. And the other thing I guess the final thing I would say is, when I started, it's been, well over 20 years now. the industry has changed so much since then. Like it's obviously true. I think I was in Photoshop 3 maybe when I started, so or something like that. So, uh, but even since COVID has changed, like it's changed so much in the last 3 years. And that acceleration of change is, I think, only going to continue. I think of things like TikTok Shop right now that everyone's talking about, everyone's trying to get on, and 3 years from now, if 4 years from now, um, that where is that going to lead us? Because I think that's going to lead us to a whole completely different omni-channel go-to-market model, which would require a whole different. So my point just is that if you're not fueled by change or love, don't if you don't actually love change at a deep level, this is a hard profession for folks because it's changing constantly. I myself, this is what gets me up in the morning of like, okay, how different is it going to be in 25 than it was this year, and trying to guess how different it will be, but then also trying to like get ready for it and drive that change and all that. So I love that, but I know it's not for everybody, but that's just,
Yeah.
but I don't think, finally this is a little pin in it, I guess. I don't think there is. The agency side has so many great things about it in terms of variety and things you can learn and things you have to kind of put your position you have to put yourself into. And on the brand side, there's a little bit more like you are all trying to do, like collectively do one or two big things, like whether it be sales margin or moving into a new market or like that. And so it's different for different people. Like that's like I said, that's in the end what I wanted to do, but that can feel also kind of stale and boring for folks as well. It's like I don't want to work on one project for the next 5 years of my life,
Yeah.
so it's you can get there on either side.
Well, that's why, sharing these stories and understanding what you do and the differences between the two sides of this industry is so important to understand. And yeah, will hopefully help people make better decisions, understand their own path, and take some insights on how to do that. So also, helping out agencies understand as well, because there's a lot of folks that have never been on the brand side. So
Yeah.
I know people that made this far have learned a lot. So Garth, I appreciate you coming on, taking the time. I know you're super busy. So thank you again. It's been phenomenal.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
My
Take care
pleasure.
and best of luck.
All right. You too.